Today we're going to look at calculating the area of a circle. First, let's remind ourselves of the parts of the circle. So all the way around the outside, we have the circumference. Straight through the middle, from one side to the other, straight through the middle, that's called the diameter. And half of the diameter is the radius. So remember, the diameter could go anywhere, straight from one side of the circle to the other, straight through the middle, and the radius is half of that diameter. Again, it could go anywhere from the centre out to the circumference. So previously we have seen that the formula to calculate the circumference of the circle, which is all the way around the outside, is C equals pi times d. And we looked at what pi is, and that represents the number 3.14, and so on. So C is the circumference, rounded 3.14 is pi, and d stands for the diameter. So if you take pi times it by the diameter, you get the circumference. The formula to calculate the area of the circle, so area equals, we're still using pi, but we're going to times pi by the radius squared. Okay. So A stands for area, pi is again rounded 3.14, and then we're going to take the radius and we're going to square it. And remember that when you're squaring something, you're timesing it by itself. So essentially this means r times r. Okay, let's look at some examples. So area equals pi times r squared. To write it a little tiny bit shorter, we're going to miss out the multiplication symbol and we're just going to write A equals pi r squared. Okay, first example, calculate the area of this circle. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down our formula. So we know we're calculating the area of the circle. So we've got A equals pi r squared. We're then going to substitute into the formula. So A equals pi times, and our radius is 3, so we're going to take 3 squared. I'm going to leave the pi symbol as it is, because if you have a scientific calculator, there is a pi button on the calculator, and I would like you to use that. Get into the habit of using that rather than 3.14. So A equals pi times 3 squared. And then we know 3 squared is 9, so 3 times 3 is 9, so you can change that. Next thing you're going to do is stick that in your calculator and get an answer. And I would like you to include the unrounded answer. So by that, I mean, if you were to stick that in your calculator, you would get a big, huge, long number, cut it off about 3 decimal places, and then just write ... just to give the idea that it's going on and you haven't yet rounded it. And then the last step is to round your answer and include your units. So here we've rounded it to 2 decimal places. And you must remember, because we're calculating area, you need the squared centimetres, or if it was metres, squared metres, and so on. So write down your formula, substitute into your formula, calculate your answer, including the unrounded answer, and then you want to round your answer and include units. Sometimes questions might ask you to round it to a given number of decimal places, but for these examples, I'm just going to round it to 2 decimal places each time. Okay, if you make sure you've got that note copied down, you can pause the video here to copy it down if needed. And once you've got that, I would like you to use this example to help you answer this question here. So pause here and calculate the area of this circle. Okay, let's go over the answer. So first thing we need to do is write down our formula. A equals pi r squared. We're going to substitute r, which is 5, into our formula to get A equals pi times r 5 squared. We know 5 squared is 25, so we can write that in. 5 times 5 is 25. Then we're going to go ahead, stick that in your calculator, and writing down the unrounded answer, you should have had 78.539. And then round that to 2 decimal places to give you 78.54, and you must remember squared centimetres. If you do not put squared centimetres, if you just leave it or you just put centimetres, you risk losing that final mark. It's really important that you remember your units there. Okay, let's look at the second example. Okay, so to calculate the area of this circle, here you can see that we've not been given the radius, we've only been given the diameter. but we can calculate the radius, and that is the first thing we're going to need to do. And looking at the parts of the circle, we know that the radius is half of the diameter. So we can find the radius by halving the diameter. So divide it by 2 to get 3.5. And now we have enough information to use our formula, a equals pi r squared, to substitute into our formula, pi times 3.5 squared. You can calculate that 3.5 squared to get 12.25. Or at this stage, you could just write that straight into your calculator, whatever way you prefer. And then we want to write your answer, the unrounded answer. First, must remember to do your unrounded answer. And then let's round it to 2 decimal places, and you must remember your squared units. So again, copy this example down, please. The important point here we're looking at is if you're given your diameter, when you're calculating area, you must remember to halve that diameter because we are using radius when calculating area. Okay, so your turn again. Can you please calculate the area of this circle and use that example there to help you? Okay, let's go over the answer. So same as the example, we have only been given the diameter here. So we need to calculate the radius before we go any further. So to calculate the radius, we're going to halve the diameter to get 5.5. Then we can use our formula. We've got the radius, so we can substitute that straight in. Either at this stage, write this straight in your calculator, or you can work out 5.5 squared first. And then you want to be writing down your unrounded answer. And then let's round it to 2 decimal places and remember your squared unit. So you should have got 95.05 squared centimetres. So well done if you got that.